this Bitcoin is immune from attack.
All right, welcome everybody to the Crypto Show's Digital Cash Evolution right here on the Bloomberg Network. And we air in Miami, Houston, Denver, and San Francisco if you want to check us out there. You can also find us in Phoenix on KFNX, the Independent Talk, which is a conservative talk network. But this show is focused about teaching people about cryptocurrencies. And, you know, there are some things to worry about. And we're actually blessed to have a guest with us today. Actually, a couple of guests. Kevin McKernan will be joining us, and he has some very interesting use cases. And then we have Jason Bloomberg, who writes for Forbes, who says that there are no use cases. Well, we'll let him clarify that. And also, I'm here with my co-host, Chuck. Chuck, take it away.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? I'm glad to be here. Once again, I just want to get a shout out to the Dash Masternode Network for partially funding the production of this podcast and radio show. So, Jason, I haven't read, I don't know a whole lot about your particular background, but I'm certainly familiar with, distrust, and I wonder if that's the source of your ire or mistrust of the cryptocurrency systems. Tell me about your stance on the cryptocurrency space.
Well, actually, I've been writing about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and as well as blockchain now for several years, 3 or 4 years, primarily from a skeptical perspective. So there's a number of issues. Perhaps the one that caught the interest of people here at this conference was the fact that because Bitcoin, Ethereum, and most of the other cryptocurrencies have a permissionless approach. That means that anybody can be a miner, and as a result, criminals are welcome to be miners. And in fact, criminals do become miners. Now, not every miner is a criminal, but many miners are criminals, and as a result, every single cryptocurrency transaction supports criminal enterprise. So this is a question for anybody who wants to trade cryptocurrency. Is it okay with you that transaction supports criminal enterprise? Could be an organized crime syndicate in Russia, China, or some other country.
And real quick, to clarify for the listeners, what he's referring to as a miner is someone who verifies the transactions for cryptocurrency and produces the new cryptocurrency. We're not talking about someone who's underage. So just for the context there.
Got it. Yeah, cryptocurrency transaction processor is a miner. And the way that cryptocurrencies work is that every one of these miners has to process every transaction. Now, only certain ones get rewarded for doing so, but everyone has to process every transaction. So you can rest assured, whenever you conduct a Bitcoin transaction, you are supporting criminal enterprise. And in my book, that's unethical.
That's an interesting stance.
Is there proof of this criminal activity? Because that seems as if it's an assertion that there is criminal activity on the network. And we're not holding that same standard against the USD, which is certainly used for more criminal activity than any crypto.
Okay, so you fell into perhaps the number one fallacy that people bring to the crypto world, and that is that you can compare crime using cryptocurrency with other criminal efforts. It's like saying, you get stopped for speeding, and you tell the cop, well, you shouldn't give me a ticket because somebody else was speeding. Or, you shouldn't give me a ticket because I'm driving a car and other people are driving trucks and they're speeding. Well, you're going to get a ticket anyway, right? That is not a good argument. So saying, well, there are criminals using crypto, but criminals also use dollars.
No, we didn't agree with you.
That's irrelevant.
On the first step, you're assuming that criminals are using crypto, but you have not provided any evidence or proof for this. Yet we have proof that there's cocaine on 90% of the USD dollars floating around in the circulation. So,
well, I mean,
on you
it's pretty clear that not only are many miners criminals, I'm not going to provide proof on a radio show, but it's easily found. Not only are miners criminals, but most of the actual use of cryptocurrency is for criminal endeavors as well. In fact,
you would say most.
Well, obviously not all, but most. And Bitcoin, for example, was one of the primary reasons the dark web became as large and as powerful as it is because before Bitcoin came along, the dark web didn't have a good way of conducting transactions. So we have
on that topic, I actually interviewed about a week ago one of the members who was an admin on the Silk Road. And the numbers that he had given me were about 23 to 30% were actually illegal transactions, which, that could be a close number on Craigslist as well. The rest of the products that were actually being sold on the Silk Road were T-shirts, tennis shoes, suits. Raw milk was one of the illegal things that they were selling on there, but they were selling.
That leads me to ask the question: how do you define criminal? Because, I think it is Venezuela or maybe Bolivia that passed a law that it is actually illegal to mine. So is that the measure by which we define criminality, or does there need to be a victim involved in this crime?
Well, I wasn't specifically talking about it being illegal to mine, although if it is illegal to mine, then that would obviously make miners criminals. But these would be people or organizations who are criminals in their own right and then decide to conduct mining as a way to make money. So these could be as simple as tax evaders. People who are not paying their taxes, or it could be organized criminal syndicates who are coming to dominate the mining industry. In fact, the number of organizations who are conducting mining is really a relatively small number, which also brings up another interesting point, and that is that mining cryptocurrency is centralized, right? The decentralization is actually a myth.
So, but back to the numbers that Danny, I like to get quantitative on these things. So 23% of those transactions were for illicit drug use. However, the definition of illicit drug use varies tremendously jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Cannabis alone was half of those. And those are
actually 78% were small amounts of marijuana. The rest of that small percentage were other illicit drugs.
Which marijuana is recreationally legal in Washington, D.C. You can smoke it on the floor if you want. So I just would like to emphasize the fact that jurisdictionally there is not universal law in the world. And so your definition of what is criminal activity probably varies based on what country you're in.
Well, here's another consideration, right? The value of cryptocurrencies has been dropping for quite a while. It's quite a bit less than it was before. And as the value, let's say, of Bitcoin drops, then mining becomes less profitable. And at some point, if you're paying for your electricity, it will become unprofitable for you. So you may decide to steal, you miners may decide to steal electricity. Of course, that is a criminal act as well. So the question is, are any miners stealing electricity, whether it's some sort of organized crime effort on a large scale, or maybe just somebody plugging into their landlord's socket without telling the landlord? That would be illegal as well.
But that's I understand your point, but that's a similar fallacy could be said about if the price of gasoline drops, therefore people will still gasoline, and so we can't have the price of gasoline dropping.
And I want to bring a perspective to this that I don't want to contextualize money in the context of whether or not criminals should be allowed to use money, because in my opinion, money is if you can't buy sex and drugs with it, it's probably not a very good money, in my opinion. Now, that's just me thinking it from a free market kind of perspective, where there are people who indeed want to do illicit things that may not be acceptable to others with money. But I don't think that necessarily means that just because I'm using a money that I'm supporting a particular activity. Now, that might be applied by the same logic if, for instance, you are a taxpayer, you are a bomb dropper, you are a killer, a murderer of children. And using the same logic that you're suggesting by transacting on the Bitcoin network, by transacting in the US dollar network, you are indeed supporting perhaps even more heinous crimes than those conducted by Bitcoin criminals.
Well, or you were supporting people down at the Texas coast when we were down there using solely cryptocurrency to pull people out of the water from the floods and give them the things that they needed.
Well, it's actually a fallacious analogy, because I was pointing out that because of the nature of cryptocurrency, every miner has to process every transaction. So if any miners are criminals, then every transaction is processed by criminals.
Okay. So if any bank is criminal, then all money is criminal? Is that the same analogy?
It doesn't follow at all.
HBSC was bags, moving around more criminal money than anything on Bitcoin.
Well, this falls into the fallacy of comparing one thing to another when there's no comparison, right? The fact that may or may not commit crimes with money or may or may not do anything else that's criminal is irrelevant to the point that cryptocurrency is primarily used by criminals, and also minors are welcome to be criminals. That is.
So I don't think that's necessarily
other criminal activity is an irrelevant comparison, and actually shows that you don't have a good argument, a counter argument to what I'm saying.
Well, so let's take your first statement, which is the majority of cryptocurrency is criminal. Now, in my experience, almost every transaction that I've ever conducted, I would say 100%, very likely, has in fact been for legal purposes.
Well, good for you.
Right, and
At least
and that's how I conduct. And so, does that mean that I'm just some sort of random statistic, a random error? I would suspect that Danny and Kevin would probably be in the over 90 percentile of legal transactions. But again, we're getting into the definitions of jurisdiction and what is criminal. So I think that it's a shaky ground when you can't necessarily define what the jurisdiction of a minor or currency is, and so on and so forth. But I think we need to go to a break. So Danny's about to cut me off.
Yeah, we are about to go to break, and I would like to switch guests, but some of this will get edited out. So let's go ahead and close in. Where can we find out more about you, Jason?
Well, my company is Intellyx, INTELLYX.com.
Awesome. And you write for Forbes. How can people
Forbes
find out about your publications?
Well, you can just go on to Forbes and Google me, Jason Bloomberg. You can see all of my articles, including the ones about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you very
coming on,
much.
Jason.
And it's really,
It
is refreshing to have a counter argument in these types of things as well. So we appreciate your input.
Happy to help.
All right. Thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I've not heard that exact argument before. It's an interesting way to view it. So,
The criminality.
Yeah.
Well, I've always heard the criminality, but I think his point is that since the mempool, everyone has to process the mempool. There's no way of not touching.
Oh yeah.
The money.
I would
but
really like to dive into that more.
We have
fungibility is critical, though, right? There's no way you can have fungibility without that.
And welcome back to the Crypto Show's Digital Cash Evolution right here on the Bloomberg Network. And we're talking with a few folks about some investing in questionable products. I don't know what the question would be. The question is, why aren't you using them? But we have Paul Rogers and Kevin McKiernan online with us. And Paul Rogers is not a former member of Bad Company, but he does have a company that deals in hemp oil. And our other guest is Kevin McKiernan, and he has quite a bit of knowledge about the marijuana industry. In fact, he has some very interesting technology. Chuck, take it away.
Well, Paul, I'm glad you're able to join us. And Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I just want to open this up a little bit by asking Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about Prime My Body and what are you doing with hemp oil?
Well, we introduced at that time, which was the first nano enhanced, is what we call our nano enhanced hemp oil. I became fascinated with hemp oil in late 2015, 2016, just because of I've seen what it can do for people, having friends that had children that dealt with epilepsy as well as autism, and then realizing that it was legal for me to sell in all 50 states as long as it didn't have less than 3% or 0.3% THC as a result of the 2014 Farm Bill Act. And then I went in search of a great formulator, great chemist, which I found through Dr. Christopher Shade. And so we introduced our hemp oil in late 2016, around October. And since then, we've become one of the largest in the United States, and just got it approved in Japan. So we're about to open there.
And how does that relate to cryptocurrency? And are you illegally mining criminal activity or anything with these cryptocurrencies? Just a joke get it from our last segment. But
no, not that I'm aware of. Well, the big issue is because it's such a brand new product that banks in the United States have made it almost impossible for us to do business We were still able to grow it over 20 million in 2017, but we had to do that with working with banks in England, in Canada, in Mexico, and the processing, because they consider you high risk, which is obviously ridiculous. We do a C of A's on every batch. We can obviously show that we don't have any THC in our product, but they still consider us high risk. So that's talking anywhere from 6 to 8% per transaction. And obviously, that's a significant amount. So I look at token and crypto, and I tell this people all the time, we're not a token company. We are a hemp oil company, and we are going to use the token to meet a serious need, which is the outrageous cost of merchant processing. So we're going to allow people to purchase product with our token. And then over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll also start being able to pay commissions on a global basis with our token.
That's great.
Let's get some input from Kevin on that. What do you think about this, Kevin? And how does that relate with your project?
Well, I wanted to say, before we jump over to Kevin, I wanted to say I had a personal relationship and get a little plug for CanMed 2018, which is happening, when is that? October 22nd through 24th?
That's it, right, at UCLA. And we'll have a lot of people talking about CBD use. Dr. Raphael Machulo himself, who discovered the molecule, I think, in '64. So yep. It should be a fun conference. And to Danny's point, we're more on the seed to sale tracking side and on the genetic side, which may play a role with people rolling out tokens. But again, we're not a token company, and we're not trying to raise money that way. We're just trying to track things, and we do this all with genetics by sequencing genomes and trying to be able to establish a real food chain, if you will, or a cannabis chain, so people can track the various terpenes and cannabinoids that may be playing a role in the entire supply chain. So it's great to see people having success like this, and I'm surprised that your banking costs are that low. I've heard numbers as high as 15% in the industry, so you're doing something right.
Would that be useful for him to, track the genomes of what he's selling so that it would be easier for him to handle the regulations?
It might be. We find that a lot of the regulators appreciate genetic fingerprints because their biggest concern is diversion control. But that it is a little bit different, I think, in the hemp industry because there's less of that. I think there's more outdoor grow out there. They tend to be tracking more of the THC content cannabis with high taxes. And so in order for them to maintain that, they want to see really hard evidence of traceability. I don't know. Do you guys have to do seed to sale tracking like MJ Freeway in the hemp world? I didn't think you did. I thought that was a little bit more less regulated than it is in the THC side of the world.
We don't. When we extracted, which we typically use ethanol extraction, and at the point that it's extracted, the farm or the extractor has to give evidence to the state of what specifically has been done with the THC that was pulled out of the hemp plant.
If you're doing this in a state, that THC is illegal, or do you have to perform this act in a state where it is legal?
What, as far as selling hemp oil?
Well, the extraction.
It has to be basically where it's legal. It's Colorado and Oregon have the best farms, or you source it from outside of the country as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a great farm up there, or breeder, I should say, that we work with that you'll probably meet at CanMed at Oregon CBD. And they recently have used some of the molecular tools we have to breed for CBG, which is another cannabinoid that behaves similar but does different things than CBD, and is also legal to go across state lines according to the Farm Bill. And so I think we're going to see this the next coming years as people are going to find the genetics that breed these particular cannabinoids that aren't THC, that do different things, and we're going to get them into oils and get them across state lines. I think it's great, and people need this stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, this ties back to the cryptocurrency market itself, right? I mean, it sounds like the banks were introducing a lot of friction to getting the Prime My Body business up and running, and you're now enabling your business with cryptocurrency. Kevin, you're enabling the distribution of information, right? And really, this is core to the metagenomics business, right? Where you're taking the hash of the genomic strings that you extract and storing them on the Dash blockchain. Is that right? That's
right. So we have a site called Canapedia, spelled with a K due to insane trademark laws. It's hard to get trademarks and things with a C in it. But that site actually houses hundreds of cannabis strains that have been sequenced, and we hash that information into the Dash blockchain. And very recently, we're very thankful to Dash, the master owners there, for funding us to actually finally sequence the cannabis genome correctly. Back in 2011, the technology we had couldn't really handle it, and now it can. And so we recently put public a nice CBD line called Jamaican Lion. It makes THC and CBD, but that one is really important because there's patents rolling out about plants that do that, and we want to get that thing in the public domain as quickly as possible. So Dash funded a beautiful cannabis reference that's now public, and that's the reference that we're going to use to be comparing everything to going forward. We'll be comparing the genetics as to how they relate to that anchor line, and that will help breeders breed for different types of cannabinoids and perhaps different types of phenotypes like auto-flowering or you name it.
Yeah, and I have to say that that's a great non-criminal use of a cryptocurrency network.
It is. It's information. That's all it is we are storing immutable ledgers have value. And I try to explain this to Peter Schiff all the time, that there's value in immutability in scientific records because there's a 17% decay in scientific data every year. It disappears.
Oh, my goodness.
And that is not something we want in the world. We want something where things don't disappear, and there's a much higher likelihood that it won't disappear in a financial ledger than it will on just popping it up on any old website.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, financial ledgers are indeed the oldest records that we have known to man, right? The ancient Sumerian tablets are in
even
financial accounting records.
Yeah.
Speaking of finances, how does cryptocurrency, connect to the cannabis industry in regards to financing?
Well, we haven't tapped into that yet, but we're seeing a lot of people tap that in the form of ICOs or other forms of fundraising. We've just been trying to very carefully look at ICOs and what they mean and where the SEC is going to go with this, because the SEC naturally is, they just allowed the first NASDAQ listing of Tilray, which is a Canadian grower, which is quite surprising that you can actually get a Canadian grower to go public on the NASDAQ. So the SEC is starting to learn more about the cannabis field, but I suspect that would be a double strike if you did a little bit of both. And so we've not been raising money that way, but many other people are in the field. And it's usually more, I think, on the software side than on touching the plant side.
And it also has been a focus of payment from business to business, and hopefully in the dispensaries for the actual users to purchase because of the draconian banking laws.
It's very true. Yeah, there is not good point of sale systems out there. Occasionally, you'll find a credit union or some type of card that seems to be ephemeral that allows you to do transactions in dispensaries. But it's mostly cash based, and that cash based economy comes with enormous costs of stuffing things in duffel bags and having high security people move it around. So I think getting crypto in there the point of sale numbers I've been hearing are higher than the 8% that you're speaking of. So you're probably at a volume and you're much more refined than some of the stories I've heard. But I've heard it as high as 10 to 15% in some places for managing cash at storefronts. So this is an enormous opportunity to make it safer. And that's something that we didn't hear from our other guest, which is the Silk Road. He brings that up as a case of all the illegal things that go on. But the Silk Road has published peer-reviewed papers showing that it reduced crime in the drug war, because people can't stab someone through the internet cable, right? This is a transaction that happens remotely, and it reduces crime. So I think there's an argument to be had here that this is a safer way to move financial money around the system than duffel bags full of cash.
And welcome back to the Crypto Show's Digital Cash Evolution right here on the Bloomberg Network. And we're speaking with a couple of folks who are trying to make the connection between cryptocurrencies and cannabis or hemp. I mean, it's a market that's made for each other, obviously. So tell us, Paul, about how cryptocurrency connects with what you're doing.
Yeah, as I was saying, we were fortunate because I do have a good relationship with a lot of banks, because I've done a lot of business around the world over the years, and I was able to negotiate good rates that we have right now with the merchant. I say good. I used to pay, 2.5%, 3% for normal products, but with hemp, 8% or so. And plus, we don't have any chargebacks. We've got a really good, solid business model, consistent month-over-month growth, and but still 8%, as well as reserve on top of that. They keep as much as they possibly can. So looking at crypto, we evaluated from several. First, we looked at a utility token. We looked at security token and decided on the asset-backed token. I'm familiar with the security token just because I'm familiar with going public. I have taken a company public, retired from that company in 2008. We took it onto the NASDAQ. Still trading there today. I'm proud to say. So I understand the public path or security token path. And because of what I feel is a certain level of ambiguity in regards to the security laws as it relates to crypto, I just didn't like being involved on the security side while the SEC was trying to figure out what they were going to do. And so we looked at it and said, what is this token really doing? It's solving a particular need in that it helps our people to be able to purchase product. It's less expensive for the company. At the same time, it's better for the people that are selling the product, because with crypto you don't have to deal with chargebacks, which people selling the product would get hit with. They have to eat that cost if anybody does a chargeback. You don't have chargebacks with crypto, nor do you have refunds. So it makes it much simpler to get away from sort of the draconian laws of Visa and MasterCard, which are so heavily weighed toward the consumer, they don't even consider the business. So they can buy product, and then as we'll build out to be able to pay commissions to our people that are selling the product and do it on a global basis. And the asset-backed comes from the fact that it's tied to a real company that is established in selling a real product and doing it on a global basis. And so the asset-backed, if you will, is a success that we've already had and that we'll continue to have, because we're fortunate. We're growing well month over month, and real product, real distribution, and real growth. So it seemed like perfect.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sorry.
So, just related to that, no, that's a great. I think you answered at least one of the questions that I had, but I want to make sure that we didn't leave our audience behind. The asset backed in this case is to your company, right? It's not necessarily that you're saying, oh, we'll take the token for this amount, like one token equals, 3 ounces of hemp oil, right? That's not exactly how you're doing it at this point.
That's right. Yeah, the value of it will be tied to the value of the company. And the uptick of sell in hemp oil in regards to not only what we do in the United States, but worldwide as well.
Okay. I was curious, is that something that maybe you guys considered? Is that something that you could have worked out, or is that it's just too much too soon right now for that?
We did talk about that. I mean, obviously I've got tried to surround myself with people that are a lot smarter in this space than I am. So I'm somewhat new to it, but in evaluating and talking to the lawyers and various consultants, I felt it was easier just to keep it really clean and simple at this point.
Yeah.
Nice.
And what do you think about the rush to the Toronto Exchange? Are you finding any temptation or pressure to try and bring this thing public through Canadian exchanges, or is waiting for the SEC to give more clarity in the States? I mean, what's the thinking with hemp? Because hemp's obviously much more a legitimized and legal industry than, let's say, the THC side of this business.
Yeah, we did look at, we've really put 100% of our focus in the introduction of this private token sale. As far as IPO or going public, we had looked at Toronto from the angle of buying a clean shell. We've looked at the Australian Stock Exchange. We looked at the Frankfurt, because that's kind of the world that I'm used to. But we stepped away from that to focus solely on the private token sale. We just felt that was a better direction.
Interesting.
And
based on my research, it looks like the next wave of exchange may be these decentralized exchanges that are coming up. Is that something that you guys are looking at?
I'm sorry, say that again. Had somebody
decentralized? Yeah, sorry. Decentralized exchanges looks like they're kind of up and coming right now. I've seen a few kind of pop up here and there, but I wonder if that's going to be a target for your token.
I think it could be. It's funny. I was at dinner last night with Bobby Lee, and that was his. He talked for about 45 minutes about centralized versus decentralized, especially in regards to the exchanges. And I certainly like the idea of a decentralized exchange, because I think it's congruent with the entire crypto model. The less centralization you got, it seems to go to the ethos or the spirit of crypto in my mind.
Awesome. Do you have anything else to add, Kevin? Or?
Yeah, well, I'll weigh in as well that we've looked at the whole ICO market as well from our end, and we've had the same reservations that, the SEC clarity just isn't there. We don't necessarily need to be pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into what we're doing. I think the valuations in the cannabis field are good enough to get things without having to go down that road. I really like the idea of an asset-backed approach, because then it's more like an equity I mean, it's not a security, right? But it's something tied to something physical. And it's almost as if, like, instead of it being a gold-backed crypto, it's like a hemp oil-backed crypto, which I think actually has more intrinsic value than gold in many ways. So, if your company's success is somehow tied to that, I think you're on a good path. And I think it's a really clever approach.
And certainly more than petro oil.
Right. No, Venezuelan oil is great. Tie that to a crypto, it'll go wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it's at least the one thing you can say about the petro is at least it taught the rest of Venezuela that cryptocurrency exists. And now what has it done for their country?
It's the best advertisement campaign that Dash never had to pay for.
Exactly. Definitely so. All right. Well, we've got about 2 minutes until the end of this at least this recording anyway. So do you have any other topics there, Chuck?
Well, I wanted to make sure that both Paul and Kevin got their contact information out. And I think that then we can probably just wrap it up.
Okay.
Certainly. Well, I'll throw mine out there. We are holding a conference called CanMed, which was mentioned earlier. It's UCLA, October 22nd to 24th, and it's mostly about cannabinoid sciences, and there's also a cryptocurrency track there as well. We'll be talking about some of these items on how do you do ICOs and how do you do seed-to-sale tracking, and where else can you use crypto inside the cannabis field. But lots of discussions on the benefits of hemp oil and CBD and many of the other cannabinoids. So feel free to pay that site a visit. It's at canmedevents.com, and I can be found at medicinalgenomics.com.
And you, Paul?
Very cool. And by the way, I'll look you up when I get there, because right now I'm planning on being at that conference.
Oh, excellent.
So we work close with Hoban Law, and I know Hoban group's going to be there. So the website, you can go learn about both the company as well as the private token sale. The website is primemybody.com, PRINEMYBODY.com. That's just the main company site. And for information in regards to the token, it's pmbtoken.com. So pmbtoken.com, and you can get all the information you need, both about the company as well as the token, and it's got some of my information on there as well.
Awesome, guys. So go and check out that, and be sure to hit us up on thecryptoshow.com. Check us out on all of our social medias, and check out our sponsors as well, dash.org, who makes it possible for Kevin to do what he's doing.